and welcome to the Women in Data Science series of the Shelley Show. This is our 13th episode. Thank you all for your love and affection to the series. It's been a great hit. I'm Shailendra, and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I hope you and your family are safe. Every fortnight, we bring the leading ladies of data science to this platform and understand their point of view in the data science world. So if you know a leading lady of data science and want everyone to hear their point of view on a roundtable, then please mention their name in the comment section. If you have a question, then please write that question in the comment section, and we'll definitely take that question in the audience Q&A section, which will be in the end of the episode. Okay, let me not waste any time and quickly bring the guests to me. My first guest is Smitha Suryanarayanan, who leads the business analytics capability in InvestNet Yodlee, a financial wellness solutions provider of InvestNet, a Chicago-based company. She's responsible for delivering business insights as well as for analytics solution validation. She has over 17 years of experience spanning consulting, digital transformation, and analytics. Smitha is an MBA from SP Jain Institute of Management in Mumbai. So let me bring in Smitha. Hi, Smitha. Welcome to the Shelley Show, the Women in Data Science series.
Thanks, Shelley, for having me.
How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good stuff. So you're in Chennai at the moment. It's too hot or it's too cold? How's the weather there?
It's pre-monsoon, I would say. So it's a good time to be in Chennai.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, my second guest, let me bring the other guest as well. My second guest is Aruna Kolluru, who is the Chief Technologist at Dell Technologies based in Sydney. She has worked with many organizations across APJ to start their journey with emerging technologies, including AI, ML, deep learning, blockchain, IoT, and big data. Her role is to help customers get onto their digital transformation journey with emerging technologies. She has over 19 years of experience in the industry working on various technologies. So let me bring in Aruna. Hi, Aruna. Welcome to the Shelley Show.
Hi, Shelley. Good to be there.
Good stuff. Our third guest, we are waiting. I think she's stuck on the network. So as she joins us, we will introduce her to the team. But at the moment, we're still waiting for her to join. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with the processes. Let's talk about processes. Guys, when I started my career around about 26 years ago, we saw a lot of different trial that was going on, and we're trying to learn as we go. Is that still the same, or is there a end-to-end process that you see in the market? What do you think with that? Do you see a very articulated process that starts and ends from one place? How does it work?
So I think it really depends. I mean, it's a classic consulting answer that says it depends, right? What I have noticed is, and I've been on the service provider side of things, I've been on, a user side of things, I've been a consultant side of things as well. And if you're a service provider, I think things are very mature because that's your bread and butter, right? So since you're providing analytics and data science solutions as your business, as your core offering, obviously the focus on having stringent processes, standards, the way you actually do everything from exploration all the way to operationalization is streamlined more and more, right? Now, so it really depends on the maturity of the company and the focus that they have on analytics, as well as the fact that, and if you're not in the services business, it really depends on your role within the organization. If analytics is given a prime place, and let's say you have an analytics organization whose existence is dependent on how they deliver analytics, automatically there is a focus on processes. But if you're a lone analyst or a data scientist embedded somewhere in a function, all you want to do is just make a difference every day. So processes are the last thing on your mind, right? So I think that's still an evolving field in that sense, processes in the field of data science and analytics. And the one thing that I've realized is the fact that there is no industry standard. And I think that is also a big opportunity for people to come together and actually create those standards. You have it for project management, you have it for program management, you have process standards for so many things, but there's actually no body of knowledge for analytics and data science today.
Well, we'll talk about it in detail as we go, but I don't know, what do you see? Because I think you look at from Dell perspective and also from your past, do you see an end-to-end structured process, or is it still hit and trial?
I think it got complex over the time, right? It used to be only the structured data, and there are set of people who were doing analysis on that data. It's structured data. They had this process of ETL and everything coming in. It was, I would say, it was so much easier earlier than now. Now we've got this new kinds of data, right? There's sensors. How do we ingest that new kind of data? Where do you really store this data? We have this images and videos, large data sets. Do we actually send them into the video management systems, or do we actually have them on our data platforms? How do we do this? This process has actually got really complicated, and now we have multiple roles which are which really have to work together to get it running.
Yep.
And I think that's where the challenge is with multiple organizations. What I see is the verticals, right? There are people who say that we are part of the IoT vertical, we are part of the data vertical, we are part of the data science vertical, there's analytics vertical, there's computer vision vertical.
Yep.
For me, it's actually all of them have to work together. I know that not one person can do everything, but it has to be a combination of all these three. I don't see that verticals will work. It has to be a horizontal kind of teams where you have people from all these different things looking to see how we can actually get a business outcome out of this particular data.
Yep. So to add to that, and I think from where I'm coming from, what I've seen, as I said, Sheetal, in the beginning, that I saw a much hit and trial kind of a methodology in the beginning. But as we have, and then I think there is a kind of a middle ground that we've come to, where we've got a bit of structure to the whole process. But then, as Aruna said, that because the unstructured information is also coming in, it still becomes a bit hit and trial again, because it's gone to that structure, and then it's started finding data which is structured and don't know what to do with that. So to look at that structure that we started building, it was around looking at the outcome that you're trying to achieve, then trying to collect the data that you want, validate, clean that data, engage with the business, so business understands what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Get and build those statistical models around it, create an output, go back to the business, and show that output that has come in, and then thereafter ask the business to execute. So it was kind of an end-to-end process to achieve that outcome that was done. But then came the story around unstructured information like the videos, the audios, the text, and people didn't know what to do with that. And so where to store that information, how to access that information. So it's still become, again, it has become the same kind of a scenario where it has become a bit unstructured in terms of the process, if you look at it. So yeah, that's what my thought process would be. Anything from you guys, if you guys have seen this process, do you see any missing ingredient in your business that you see that would have made a huge lot of difference? Maybe you've learned from your experience, or maybe you think that if that particular part of the process was added with something, it will make a huge difference. Do you have anything to add there? What do you think, Aruna?
Yeah, there are a couple of things, but before that, I would actually say we already spoke about the complexity, but there is a kind of positive to that as well, right? The whole process, what we have now with the unstructured thing as well.
Yep.
Traditionally, maybe a decade back, when people were analyzing this data, it was easier to build these models and segment the customers and get the list for the, maybe think about credit risk or who we should have to give loan for, who we should not give for. Now it's so much easier, right? You can actually run those models, and instead of actually sending mails to them, looking at who is responding to that, looking at what's really worked and what did not work used to take a long time. Now, the positive thing is it's much quicker, right? You send it in an email, you actually can really test what's working, what's not working. I think that's something which we really learned, how quickly we can see what's working.
What do you
and
think?
go through the right process. Yeah.
Yep. What do you think, Smitha?
So I think one of the things that I think as you mentioned about unstructured data, right? The type of data that we are dealing with today is way different than what it was 7-10 years ago. And so what we have to also learn, and that's something that we struggle with every day, is how much time do we spend on actual exploration versus actually going out there and solving the problem. And what happens, not getting that balance right, then hits you at the core of speed. So you end up, you become like, I always call it the pig with data syndrome, right? I mean, you're like a pig and in mud. You have so much data. You can get dirty at the end of it and not really get anything out of it if you spend too much time on exploration. But the other way around also is a problem. You jump in and try solving a problem with all these data sources. And then you realize, well, I actually didn't solve anything because I didn't structure the problem well enough at the beginning. So I think that balance is something we are still striving and looking to understand, right? How much time do we spend in the initial phases, given just the diversity of data that we've got to deal with today?
Okay.
And that's where I think the processes have to evolve as well. We have to evolve our thinking in a more structured way to get to the end outcome.
Okay. Sorry, I've got one point to make before I go. Vishali Bhargava has not liked what we're doing. Vishali, do you think anything that's gone wrong, or you're not able to hear? Can you please mention that in the comment section and we'll address that? On the other side of things, guys, if you've got any questions for these two beautiful ladies of data science, please put that in the comment section and I will definitely ask those questions to these girls. Okay, let's talk about people. Now, data science, I know, is a very new term, so to speak, because the word data science I've been hearing for the last 4 or 5 years, but we've been doing what we've been doing for the last few years. When you meet people, what do you see when you talk to people about data science? You see a lot of people who are true data scientists. First of all, let's define data scientists. What do you think of a data scientist, and what do you think it looks like? So, Aruna, do you want to go for it first?
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting question, right? Everyone has their own definition of it. And there are lots of titles, people who have changed their titles to data scientists from who used to be a business intelligence analyst or whatever, right? They're different titles. I'm not saying they're not supposed to, but it's an interdisciplinary skill, right? And within that, what I feel is the most important, like Smitha was mentioning, you were mentioning, it's always important to understand the industry. We always here start with a problem. What skills do we need to understand to start with the problem? It's important to have that industry know-how and the business acumen, right? Even if a data scientist has great skills and if they're not able to spot the problems and the potential challenges from the business, they cannot really stay relevant and be competitive, right? So they need to really understand what the industry is and how they can actually couple these technical skills with the industry knowledge. That's the key. And when it comes to the technical skills, I feel there's so many things, and this industry is changing so quickly with new technologies coming in, new APIs coming in, and new stuff coming in. The most important skill, I would say, is actually being interested to learn more, right? Being adaptive. Just if you're interested to learn, you can just keep up with these things. Again, there are multiple roles in here. There are people that I feel the biggest gap is to understand the industry and tell what use cases you can actually really start with for that data. And we have lots of data scientists coming out of the unis right now who studied data science. They're very good at running these models if you actually give them a problem. So the gap is actually who's defining that problem. So that's where we can actually improve those skills. And from the technical perspective, I would say, again, anyone who has some programming knowledge with C++, Python, Java, or using any analytical tools will be fine. But the most important thing is they should be willing to learn continuously, and they should be curious.
Yep. What do you think, Smitha?
Agree with a lot with what Aruna said. At the end of the day, see, data science is not, it's a new term. I remember when we used to do optimization problems, we called it operations research. At the end of the day, it was also what it was. And I remember reading this fat book that said practical decision making or practical decision sciences. That's what it was called in the early 2000s. And today we call it data science. It's not like a body of knowledge of like physics and chemistry, which has a clear definition, right? So people do take advantage of that and call themselves a data scientist. And even I don't have a clear yardstick to say, okay, are you a data scientist or not? Sure, call yourself what you want, but are you relevant to the kind of work that you need to do? That's the question that we need to ask. And the way we look at it in our organization today is our analytics capability. We call it a triage. We say it's a triage between analytics engineering, business analytics or domain skills. And the third is what we call deep data science, which is more around AI, ML, DL, modeling. Statistics is something that I think all three people today do. I mean, so 10 years ago, everything we did in analytics was majorly statistics. Today, we've got the AI element. We've got a lot more complexity coming in with unstructured data. So from a skill perspective, I think deep knowledge in one of the three, but with the ability to appreciate and understand the other two nuances really is what makes a holistic professional today. But you need to have your depth in one of the three. And I was reading something that was very interesting, going back to what Aruna was also talking about. The last few years, there's this concept of analytics interpreters that's come in. Because they've realized that we've got AI, ML engineers who are damn good at coding. You've got people who are very good at pipeline engineering and things like that. You've got people who are very, very good with domain. They understand the ins and outs of banking, the ins and outs of consumer industry, but they don't get data. So it's about finding those people who have the ability to connect the dots and interpret problems in the context of data. And I think McKinsey actually had written a very nice paper on it that said that analytics interpreter is actually the job of the future, not data scientist. And the good thing about being an analytics interpreter is I can go into that role from being an analytics engineer or a data scientist or a business analyst.
Yep.
It's just the way you, I would say, develop broadly rather than just vertically.
And that's very interesting because I think most of the people, when they want to become a data scientist, want to either do modeling, want to either play with the data, but not many people who think about their communication skills on how to actually communicate with the business so that when they talk to the business understands and they can execute what they're trying to do. Because as one of my PhDs used to say, Shelly, I can build a model that will give you $1 billion, but if it is not executed, it's good for nothing. So, I think that defines the fact that which I talk about on most of the shows is around the fact that there are three components to a data scientist. You've got a person, you've got an individual who's good at extracting information, and today it's becoming much more complicated because you're not only extracting information from an RDBMS environment, but also from a video, from an audio, from a semi-structured text data, and so forth. So that skill is quite important because I think they call them data engineers or something like that. Then you've got the statistical modeling aspect of it in the same guy that you want. That you want that guy to be very good at extracting data and then very good at building a statistical model. And then suddenly you want that guy to be very good at communicating with the business as well. And all these three things in one person is very difficult. And I've seen that firsthand. Because, and I tell you this, that a person, and this is a classic personal experience, the person who's a very good modeler, and we did that. There was we had to extract 20 million rows of data from an RDBMS. Now, we're not even talking videos or something else. RDBMS, 20 million rows. That guy, a statistician, was running that query for 3 days and couldn't get it sorted. The data was still pulling. And I got an IT person to sit down. In 2 hours, 20 million rows were done. So you see the difference between the two. And then when I asked that same guy to go and talk to the business and explain what we've done statistically and what we should be doing next, all we found was that was very, very difficult, and that meeting didn't last. In fact, the business called me and said, "Who did you send me? You understand how business is going." So you getting all these three things in one person is quite difficult. And so I think you need three different pillars. And as you said rightly, and what we figured out was that we could do that through a pod kind of an environment where you've got a data engineer, a statistician, and a person who could you create a data science pod instead of creating a data science one individual. And I think that's what you also mentioned, Smitha. Something similar is where we are at. Is that true? Is that what you're seeing as well?
Totally. I mean, that's why we call it a triangle. Any problem, if you want to take from concept to operationalization, requires all these three skills. Now, sometimes the problem is so complex that you need to lead with an engineering mindset because it's all about the volumes of data and the complexity of data. So the other two skills may take a back seat, but it cannot be missing completely. In some cases, it's all about the context, in which case it's an analyst or a business analytics led project. In some cases, it's deep exploration. We are trying to figure out something that nobody's ever figured out before. It has to be data science led from a or model led, I would say. But the triage or the triangle is important. Every product, every problem has to be looked at from all three lenses. Otherwise, you'll never have a sustainable solution. You might solve it at a point of time. Like you could extract 20 million records, but you won't know what to do with it. So I think that's something that we've learned over time, and we're trying to actually institutionalize that in our work going forward as well.
What do you think, Aruna?
Yeah, I just want to tell you an example here. I went to a customer who has this data about traffic, all the traffic data from the Bluetooth sensors and everything. And there was a data scientist who was a very accomplished data scientist who sat there and observed that one of the bus was going off route every Friday. And he found that anomaly, right? He was a good data scientist to look for anomalies there. And the driver was actually going for lunch on Friday and having his lunch and coming back to the route. It was not of value, right? Unless he knows what the data is and how he can actually get what is important for it. Like Smitha was mentioning, we need to understand the business first. What is the problem we are doing? And also have the right data to really get to that. So it's a combination of multiple roles we need here. And like you were mentioning, it's not one person. We have to have the teams of people working together rather than working in verticals.
Good stuff. And that reminds me of a story as well, and I will tell you that. But before that, guys, if there are more than 30 people watching this show at the moment, guys, if you've got a question for these two ladies, please put that in the comment section and I'll definitely take that up. And that brings me to the story which I remember. I was invited to go to Korea. And I went to Korea, and there was a guy who was actually trying to sell a analytics project. And I'll call it analytics for the moment. It is a data science project, but anyways. Cut the story short. He said, we've got this guy who's been sitting on the data for the last 6 months, and he's trying to build something. And every time I ask him, he doesn't even respond. He says, you don't know, I'm a PhD. I know more than you. So I said, okay, fine, let me have a chat with him. And he said, okay, bring him in. So he brought him in. First of all, he didn't want to meet me because I'm not a PhD, so what do I know? But anyways, they convinced him that he's the vice president, so you got to meet him. And that is from a different job before this company, before SAP. So they got that guy, he came in to see me, and I said, what are you trying to do? He said, I'm trying to build an ARIMA model. I said, so what is the problem? He said, I'm building this model, and it takes me 3 minutes to run one model. And there is 400 into 3, 1200 different combinations that I need to run. So 1200 into 3 minutes is 3600 minutes before the first run finishes. I said, okay, very interesting. So 3600 minutes, which means in months. So we're talking about a few months before we actually get the first model out. So I said, Can I ask you one question? He said, what? If there was a magic wand and I just run it today and I brought that 3,600 minutes to 3 minutes or 2 minutes, would that model work? He said, no, the accuracy level is only 25%. Then I'll work on the accuracy level to fix that. And hang on a minute. And he was so married to that model, and he said, I've promised the customer that this is an ARIMA model problem, and I need to give him an ARIMA model that will work in less than one hour. Okay? And then I asked him a few questions, and we figured out that it was not even an ARIMA model problem. It was something else. And the whole model could be run in less than 2 hours if we'd taken a different approach. But this is how a statistician thinks, because they want to get it absolutely accurate, absolutely right with what they are thinking, and they don't want to think outside of the box as well. And that's very important to become a data scientist as well. Okay.
Actually,
Sorry?
Yeah, actually, I don't like the term scientist with the role. Scientists are normally people who have this, they actually have input, and they actually have set an output, and they want to prove something, right, to an accuracy of 99.9% or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas here, we're actually trying to get life to a business problem, right? Like solve a business problem and do something which is working. I think that's where the engineers actually cut the corners and make things work. And we are not scientists to prove something here.
No, I totally agree with you. Okay, lots of budding data scientists who want to become data scientists are watching this episode. And so I would like to ask you a question, guys. What do you advise someone who's just come out of college or is aspiring to become a data scientist? Well, of course, the times have changed. When you started was a different time than today. What do you advise them that to become a data scientist, you should do this? Where should they focus on? Should they focus on coding? Should they focus on business domain knowledge, which they do not have initially? Or should they be talking about, doing some software? What should they focus on? Aruna?
Again, it's multiple roles in there, right? If they really want to focus on building these algorithms and something, they don't really need to go deeper into the math, but they're because the algorithms are pre-built and we have the frameworks. If you want to run that, they are available. But if you really want to go and tweak those algorithms and do the performance, improve the performance, and get to the stage where they can put it into production, that's when you really need to understand the math behind it as well. And the third role is the understanding the business problem, like Smitha was mentioning, maybe the interpreter, right? So you have to choose which path you want to take, and everything has a different role. If you want to go with the maths path, you need to get your basic algebra, the limits and all those things, statistics and other things strong, and understand what's really happening within the algorithms. How do we improve them? How do we create new algorithms? The second path is if you want to be a programmer and run these algorithms. There are Python has been the most popular language now. It's a multidisciplinary language. You can actually do just programming for web languages or anything, right? It's a multi-purpose language, I would say, and it's easier, so much easier. The learning curve is small, so Python might be the way to start. At the same time, within the data science itself, right? Again, they call machine learning models and deep learning models. Which path do you want to take? Choose one particular thing. I would say if you're interested in statistics and things like that, or understanding, machine learning will be good. And if you want to do deep learning, I would say choose one, right? Whether it's computer vision or natural language processing or the acoustic analysis, choose one of them, because they are deep, large fields in themselves. And choosing one will give you that path of really getting to know what's happening in there. And
Yeah. Okay, Smitha, what do you think? What should you advise?
So I think very similar. See, there's an aptitude and there's a skill, right? The aptitude that I figure, which most people lack across the board, whether it's for data science or any career, tends to be common sense. I think that's one. So there are very few people who actually say I can make a career out of common sense. And if you have that ability to look at things dispassionately, connect the bigger picture, look for the dots. I think the analytics interpreter kind of a role will fit you very well, because then you're able to take yourself out of the situation and analyze it dispassionately. But if from a technical perspective, I think Aruna covered a lot of it. For freshers especially, the challenge is it's a bit of a dichotomy. I want to be a domain expert, but domain expertise comes by working in that domain. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
impossible for me to hire a domain expert out of college. So I would
Yeah.
say just forget that thought process, because that's not going to happen. The good thing, however, is today in this day and age, there are so many analytics services companies which will hire you and train you for a domain. If you're actually interested in becoming a banking analyst or a FMCG analyst or whatever analyst, uh, you have options. So look at those options of saying, okay, let me go the services route, develop my domain knowledge, because I'm not going to get a job in a FMCG straight out of college to be an analyst. Maybe you might luck out, but most likely they want some background in the industry, right? So you have to figure that. So I would say look for your own aptitude and then find opportunities. For people who are already in their first job, I think you already have an opportunity to figure out or play with data in your workplace, even though it may not be part of your job role. And I'll give you a personal example, right? So I started my career with Ernst& Young as a risk consultant slash internal auditor at a time period when audits and process work was done by looking at documents, right? And I still remember my first big data exposure was when I went up to a procurement manager and I said, can you get me all your transaction data from the SAP materials management module? And he looked
Yep.
at me and he said, what are you asking that for? You're like a consultant who's doing process audits.
Yep.
And my
Yep.
thought process was, why would I have to go through documentation when I can look at data to figure out where you're goofing up, right?
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
that was not a approach that was taken in 2003, 2004. But I saw that as an opportunity because I love playing with data. I mean, I was in love with Excel at that point of time in my life, right? And I think you have to find those opportunities. Even in your first year of your career, you'll find it. And today it's even better. You've got open data, you've got Kaggle, you've got competitions. Go mine, the US Bureau of Census. You have so much rich demographic data, and you can actually start seeing patterns on your own. So if you have the aptitude, I think the rest comes. Today is in a world where you can learn anything just sitting out of your house. And today it's not by choice. You have no choice but to sit out of your home and learn, right? So I think it's a good place if you're in the early stages of your career to actually explore your aptitude, and you can actually find offline projects to hone your skills. That's pretty much possible.
No, absolutely. And I think that reminds me, because you said that rightly so, I actually created a video on exactly that, which talks about how to become a data scientist for the people who actually want to jump in. And you rightly said, there's lots of data available today. By the way, guys, that video is available on YouTube. So if you want to watch that, and I'm blatantly promoting it, but if it is helpful, please have a look at that, where I explain how there is a lot of data available today. And I say that in almost every video, every show of mine. When I started my career, we didn't have the software. Where did we have the software, right? We could only use SAS or SPSS. There were only two things. And SAS, I remember it was $250,000 a code. Today, R is free. Python is free. So that's the software thing sorted. Data is everywhere. Well, it was in those days only data was available through RDBMSs, and you had to work for a company to get access to that data. Today it is everywhere. You can get data from internet very, very quickly. Hardware, and I tell you, I built my first PC, and I paid 40,000 rupees in 1995. A lot of money. It may be just $1,000 today, but in those days it was a lot of money for someone who's not even started his career. Today you can go to AWS or any kind of a cloud service, and you can get it for $25 a month, which is cheaper than chips. So you've got the software, hardware, data, everything is available. All you need to do is find a problem that you can solve and work so that you can actually learn more. And so when you go for a job, you know all this all the nitty-gritties, because you've actually thought through all of that and you've gone through that process of data science, if it is. So I think that's very important for people to understand. And so, guys, there's a video for that if you want to watch. Also, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, follow me. If you're watching me on Meet, on Twitter, please follow. And if you're watching on YouTube, please press the subscribe button and press the bell icon, as they say. Anyways, let's get to the next question around women in data science, particularly. So tell me why there are very few women in data science. So this is the 13th episode. So we've got 39 women so far here on this platform, and we've spoken to 39 women. But it is a very big challenge to get to find women in data science. And I think you may turn around and say, but that's in every field. Why do you think that's the problem in data science only? What do you think?
So yeah, my initial reaction was exactly what you said, Shelly. That's the case in all fields. So statistically, it all automatically applies to data science as well. I think one part of it is primarily also related to women in STEM, right? As we say, science, technology, medicine. I think as that proportion goes up, you will automatically start seeing the number of women in data science also go up proportionately. To be fair, though, I would say compared to a lot of other fields, data science actually has more women than a lot of other comparable, or not comparable, but other domains, right?
Yep.
So from a leadership perspective, however, it's the same thing. The more women you have at the bottom of the pyramid, the chances are more will trickle through to the top.
Yep.
Right? And I think that's something that we will see going forward as well. I personally am not a big I wouldn't be able to say, oh, having women in data science makes this difference to the field. It is at the end of the day true for almost all jobs, but it is important to have diversity of thought. Now, whether that diversity of thought is coming from the fact that you're from a different country, whether you're of a different gender, of a different background, but diversity of thought does help solve problems better. Right. And from that standpoint, a healthy mix of all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of diversity elements is important. And again, I still stand by the thing that at least in the organizations that I've been with in the last few years, the gender ratio has not been terrible. I mean, we're nowhere close to 50-50, but we're not 1:5 either. What used to be in consulting, we were 1:5. And there you're like, okay, the chances are you walk into an elevator or into a meeting, you're the only woman in the room. That's also changed compared to the early 2000s. But the starting point for analytics has been, especially in India, right, as well as has been from the services industry. And the services industry has been comparatively better represented from women in the workforce. And that's now slowly cascading as well to data science. One place I do see a dearth is analytics engineering. I don't know why. It's almost the same concept as mechanical engineering years ago, when you would hardly find a female mechanical engineer. You will still not find very many data engineers who are women, and let alone women engineering leaders. I'm not saying they don't exist. Definitely they do, but it's nowhere in the proportion as the general data science population as well.
Aruna, what do you think?
Yeah, it's actually interesting to see what Smitha is saying. It might be regional as well. In multiple regions, it might be different. I don't see that here, like what she's saying. I see quite a few number of people, not just with multiple customers, right, who I work with. I see very few of them. I think the challenge is it's the perception that it's complex. Right from the beginning, everyone thinks it's complex. And most of the times when we go to this STEM education, when what they tell children is coding is not the only job in IT, right? We do have other roles. Yes, we do have other roles. It's important. But what message we are giving there is coding is complex, right? So it's not complex, right? Like whether it's coding or anything, I think we can do it. I just would like to quote Emma Noether. She's actually a scientist, very old person, she was actually working on Einstein's theories. Today, if we are using Einstein's theories, it's because of her. right? But no one even knows her. She was actually not even allowed to study that or publish her work and everything. So the perception actually has to change. The perception is that everyone can do anything. What I feel is only thing you need is actually curiosity. You should be curious to learn, and you should be willing to learn. When you're willing to learn yourself, like you said, the whole world is in your fingertips today. Right? I wish I would go back to college today and start relearning everything again. And there's so many innovations happening these days. Recently with Elon Musk Neuralink brain chip, right? That's
Yeah.
really amazing. And we have neuromorphic computing coming in before the quantum computing. And there's lots of innovation happening, and we need more people. Like Smitha was mentioning, diversity of thought is important. We need to have these girls really interested in this and take it forward to the next versions of the products or the solutions.
So you mentioned the name of that scientist. What was the name?
Emma Noether.
Emma
Emmy
Not.
Noether. Emmy
Emma Not.
Noether. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, guys, if, you can find her and see where she is and what she's doing. If that's what I don't know. You're saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you don't get that visibility, right? People think women cannot do these things. There are lots of women who have done it. That's what I'm saying, right? There are lots of women who are not visible, but they have done a lot of things
Well,
who
I
we
have
can look at.
I have a little different point of view. A very minor thing. When I was in school, all the first 10 from 1 to 10 ranks, we used to have ranks,
Yeah, yeah.
were all girls. And we used to say, oh, girls do studies come natural to girls. They don't have to go play cricket. They just have to study, and they're very intelligent. And as we look at data science as it is very, very intellect kind of a field, if one may say. So automatically, I would imagine that you'll find a lot many girls in the field than boys. Don't you think? I'm just talking from experience.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Not just in data science. I see that across, right? Even you get to schools, there are girls who are actually excelling in most of the things, and when it comes to workforce, it's the complete opposite, right? It changes. Even today, I have two boys in school, and what I see is girls are more attentive, they learn well, and they do everything. But when you come to the workforce, it's a completely different perspective, right? They are told that you cannot do this, or they don't have. Personally, I feel they don't have examples to look up to,
Uh-huh.
and that's where when you see someone, that's when you think, right, like I want to be like someone, right? Lots of people have that role models. We don't have as many role models for women as men do. That's one thing I feel, and that's where I feel that we should really make these people visible, right? This is one. Emmy Noether is one scientist, and I've also met Jocelyn Bell Burnell, who actually found pulsars in the sky. Right, she was actually presenting here, and she just missed a Nobel Prize, but she has done a lot. Right, there are many women who do those things, and I feel that we can do anything. Right, it's not just non-coding jobs or marketing jobs within an IT organization, but any jobs.
So I would say that we've had 39 women in data science so far who people or girls should look up to. And I've had them there on this platform. So, guys, if you're watching this and if you're looking for someone to look up to, a mentor or someone, please reach out to me and I will connect you to these guys. And I think there is a need to mentor and educate and take those girls who want to do something big in the data science space. That's one thing. Second thing, I request all the audience and you guys that if you know someone who should be celebrated, who should be on this show so that people can hear from them, should know what they've done and what they're doing, then please mention their name in the comment section and YouTube afterwards, or the names you've said, and I will personally reach out to them and request them to come to the show so that more and more people can know about women in data science per se. and people should learn from them. The hardship, the work you guys do is quite different to a man would do. And that brings me to the next question for that. You guys have worked with men, and you see a lot of men working with. Uh, do you see there is a difference in their approach towards data science between a man and a woman, or is it all the same? There is no difference. It's just the same, or is it a change in approach towards doing analytics, doing data science, between the two people? What do you think, Smitha?
Actually, I need to ask my team that question, because I've actually never reported to a woman who in the field of data science or analytics. So I actually don't have a frame of reference for that. But I think, to be very, very fair, I've also been very lucky that I've never faced blatant or any sort of sexism in my career. I've had actually extremely diverse, pro-diversity, pro-women managers, even though they were male, right? And I consider myself to be extremely lucky in that sense, because a lot of people go through a lot of stuff. I've actually had the opposite experience. I've had managers who actually taken the opposite stand. Their stance has usually been, it's diversity means, it does not mean that you need to manage home and work. It means I as a male need to help out more at home as well. I've actually had managers say that. So I kind of grew up with, in my career with very good male role models as well as around my house as well. We've always had working women. The men always help around the house. It's never been blatant in terms of, no, you're a woman, you need to cook. I never learned cooking till I was 24, and because I was hungry, right? So it's pretty much, I have a privileged background in that sense. I consider myself super privileged, but I do speak to a lot of my colleagues who actually have certain views on this topic, right? And from that standpoint, I think it's Shelly, give me the. I think I lost my trail of thought. What was your exact question again? I'm sorry. I was thinking about
is the approach a man takes to data science different to the approach a woman takes towards data science?
I don't think it's different from a data science perspective, but there have been known differences in the way things are managed, and that's again not specific to data science. I would say that's a known fact of leadership, right? That there's a male style, a female style. Now, data science, no, I have not seen that particularly at work. No.
What do you think, Aruna?
Yeah, even I have not seen from the data science perspective. And like Smitha said, I had a very good list of managers who I worked with, right? Every manager I worked with are my mentors even now, right? I don't know, like the Smitha was mentioning, I heard from many people that they are having problems with their managers and everything, but we're just lucky enough to get these people. And I feel that we should not be lucky, right? Everyone should be like this. And that's when the whole thing will be really nice. And I really take this opportunity to thank all my managers so far who really molded me to be what I am today.
Okay, now both of you have been data scientists at some point in time, right? So tell me, what are the kind of challenges that you faced while through your journey? Any particular challenge that you want to share with the audience, so that when they're approaching data science, they're aware of those kind of challenges? For example, and I'll start with it. My challenge was playing with large volumes of data, which means everything will take a lot of time to build, which means that I'll tell you this thing. My wife was pregnant 8 months, and I was trying to build something, and I told her that I'll come back at 4 o'clock on a Friday. And I know that Fridays are light in Australia, and I reached home at 5 o'clock in the morning because it was building and I was monitoring. So that is one challenge, which I would say that it takes a lot of time to build something. You don't want to lose it, because if you lose it, then you've lost it, and you've lost time. Because if you want to show something on Monday and you're expecting it to finish at 4 o'clock, fine, it will finish. I'll finish by 5. But if it keeps on going overnight, you're waiting because you don't want to reach on Monday and see that something failed. So, any challenges that you want to share?
Yeah, I would say rather than a challenge, you get hooked to these things, right? These are really interesting parts of things. And when the whole TensorFlow framework was released and I was able to do computer vision things, I used to dream with bounding boxes, right? Everything used to be with a bounding box, even in my dreams. So it gets you really attached to it, and you start working more and more. But I think that's it's a challenge as well as interesting part, the most interesting part of it.
That only shows how passionate you are about it, and that's it. So because you would start dreaming about stuff at work only if you think about it and dream. And for example, I tell people I drink, eat, sleep data. So my dreams are like that only. But that's not a challenge. That's a good thing to have, because for data scientists, then you get new ideas, because then you can solve new problems and create new problems that you can solve. And that is very
Yeah.
important, because if you
But I
can't
think that
solve a problem, the chances are you won't be able to solve it.
sure. But there'll be a guilty feeling, right? Like how much time you're spending with your family and how much you're spending here. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Smitha, what do you think?
So I think from a challenge perspective, in my initial stages of my career, there was one element where as a person who's seen the value in data and what data can do to drive decision making and kind of things that you can do with data. And I used to have a kind of a front-facing account management role as well at some point of time in my life. Convincing your stakeholders who are used to taking decisions on the fly with absolutely no reference to data, and trying to explain to them that there is value in investing in analytics, a platform, an ecosystem. That was a challenge that continues even today, right? That's something that you will find this one person who says, but why do I need to wait for data to come in? I know what needs to be done, right? I think that challenge was something that I had to go through. Then it honed my stakeholder management skills heavily, because I think that's in a consulting world, in a services world, that's something that you lived with in the initial phases of analytics, where people were still scratching their heads and saying, what is this analytics all about, right? Then that was a big challenge. More recently, though, so Yodlee is a big data company. We ingest about 40-50 million transactions every day, right? So I had to transition from my old analytics services, the consulting mindset, to somebody who's actually in the thick of big data. And what I realized is I can still find my way around and figure out an answer to a problem based on loads of volumes of historic data. It's a skill. And just to be transparent, I am not an engineer. I'm an accountant by training. Okay, before my MBA, I was an accountant. So for me, I actually have chosen my career path where my aptitude has taken me, not where my skills and my training has taken me. So I had to learn everything from SQL to actually figuring out how pipelines work, how do you query, how does AWS work, all of that in the last 3 years. It's not something that comes easily to me. But what I realized then also is, because I always am focused on solving a problem, I have realized that I can solve a problem right now. But can I actually create a product that takes that same algorithm and can solve it time and time and time and over again with this degree of data volumes? That was not my mindset, because I came from a consulting background where somebody gives you a problem and you just want to solve it and say, okay, data says this is possible, this is not possible, here is my set of recommendation, let's move on. Now, moving that into an ecosystem where you're actually fueling decisions day in and day out, building repeatable models, you realize what is the value of actually making sure you understand data engineering and how important it is to have tight-knit collaboration between your analysts, your modelers, and your data engineers. Because even just leaving one of those people out of the equation, the solution will not work. And that's actually been one of the largest challenges that I've had to overcome, is to say, stop thinking just like an analyst. Think from the perspective of your production engineer as well. And make
So,
sure that you don't overcommit on his behalf or her behalf. That's another
so
thing.
actually, that's very, very interesting, because when you come from so I've worked in corporate, a vendor, and a consulting company, so all three. So when I started corporate, I was only worried about the problem. I didn't care whether it could be communicated or not, whether it could be completized or not. When I became a consultant, which is services, as you said, I'm only worried about getting that problem absolutely right so that people can use it. But when you become a vendor, you need to templatize it. You need to make sure that it can be repeatable. If it is done at one place successfully, it should be able to do it in second place. But that was a transition I had from even at a consulting company to becoming a vendor. It was that particular transition where I was important. I was thinking in my mind and telling my guys how important it is to think about what will be the input. Don't think about where it is coming from, but what it will be, what will be the model, and what will be the output. If you could capitalize all of that, then the chances are that you can reuse it going forward. And I think that was a huge mindset change, and you rightly said, Smita, from where you are to where you go. And as lots of companies today are becoming product companies where they want to create level products which can solve a particular problem, no matter what industry you come from, no matter what data source you have, I will just ping and get that data out and run that model and get an outcome kind of thing. And I think that's a very huge differentiation and a change, as you rightly said. Perfect. That was very well explained, Smita. Guys, all those who watching this, more than 25 people watching this, guys, if you've got a question, put that in the comment section, and I'm 100% sure I will take that in next 15 minutes. Okay, next, let's talk about success stories. So you guys have been doing this for a while. Um, Before we get to success stories, one more thing, guys. Please like and share this video so more and more people can learn from their experiences, and more women can actually watch this to say that they have a career in data science, and they would, uh, if they want to learn something from these two ladies, this is where they can learn from them. Okay, let's come back to case studies. Tell me one or two use cases. It's up to you. You can say three use cases. When you thought it made that data science project, which maybe you were involved in or you were not were involved in, but you still want to share, which made a huge difference to the organization, monetarily or non-monetarily doesn't matter, but it made an impact. So please share that use case, because I always believe that success of a particular scheme is based on the success stories that they create. So if you've got a success story to share it now. We'll start with Aruna this time.
Sure. So one of the most important things I see is actually the PPE, or the personal protective equipment detection. In hazardous conditions, workers actually have this hard hats and the vest and all this personal protective equipment. How do we actually get to mandate that? Sometimes they really are mandated, but they just forget it. We can just have a camera and monitor it continuously. I think the benefit here is actually monetarily yes in terms of the insurance and other things, but it's the life, saving lives, right? How do we actually protect them? Identifying if they're wearing their protective gear, and also looking at how distant they are from this large forklifts and things like that, right? Like if they're very close, how do we alert them? Saving lives is, I think that's the one of the interesting ones.
Okay, Smita?
So I think very recently in Yodlee, we started publishing a lot of consumer spending data for COVID, actually, because we have a lot of de-identified consumer data and consumer permission data. And we realized that, we're sitting on a gold mine, and we might as well as make some of those insights available to the larger world. So there's a lot of journalists who pick up these tidbits from us. So we started putting that out there on the website. So what we've realized is, it's kind of a real-time monitor of what's happening, specifically the US, because a lot of our data is US-centric. We're actually able to see, just the month before COVID hit, how people cancel travel plans, travel spend went down, and then we started seeing, even now we're able to see ebbs and flows of recovery. We're able to correlate that with cases. If people want to do that, they're able to then look at open data and then look at spend data. So we're actually, it's very live and relevant right now, because we continue to support it every week. We actually put that out there in the public domain. So that's probably a very real life example of how we saw we had the data. And there was a clear demand for that kind of insight in the market. And because it's something for good, we actually put it out there in the open web as well. Right? So that's one example of what I call a very recent success story. Another, I think, was in one of my roles where I kind of was playing half analytics, half, I would say, operations officers, the COO's office. And one of my jobs there was to move a lot of strategic decisions towards a data-driven culture. So now that's not where you're really playing with extreme volumes of data. In some cases we did, but a lot of it is actually more around saying, you're hiring a consultant to do this. You actually have all the data to make that decision yourself. So here's what you should do. Pretty much saying, okay, board level decisions, CEO level decisions, how do I actually create the ecosystem to make those data driven? And I think we made a huge difference because we were able to actually, one, not go external for a lot of strategic advice. And second was also, as a company who had lots of data, it helps set the tone from the top when the CEO or the COO started quoting statistics rather than saying, well, here's my decision. And I think that also drives the data-driven culture top-down. So I consider that from a strategic perspective as one of the biggest wins that I've had in my career.
Okay. So any monetary one where you had where you saw a huge impact or a huge change? Anyone?
So we've seen, I've done work around sales and marketing campaigns where we've actually been able to do, effective A/B testing and actually place campaigns for higher success. That usually has had a clear, I would say, monetary value attached to it. So that, there are many, many such cases. At one point, I was doing a lot of sales and marketing analytics, and default, everything is measured in dollars there. So we had a lot of those success stories, but that was fairly, I would say, pre the time when every campaign management was automated. Today, almost everything is automated. But I'm saying 7, 8, 10 years ago, you do a lot of this manually. Right, so that was one.
Sorry, Aruna, any computer vision story that you want to share?
Yeah, it would be from the retails, right? Retail, how they're actually placing things and where they're placing things, and doing that analytics of where people are, looking at that heat maps, right? Where people really stand. I think now we don't want the heat, the red points on the heat map now because of the social distancing and everything. At one point, we wanted those things. So now maybe distributing things, right? Like how do we distribute that? That's actually, again, monetary, right? Like how do we place it and how do we convert it? The other one is actually loss prevention, right? We do work with some partners on that as well. We do have some loss prevention solutions to really look at how people are really behaving there. Like, are they just taking? I actually heard in some of the stores, they pick up a large microwave, go to the counter and return it, go to the returns and return it without even paying for it. So yeah, I was even surprised as well. I thought smaller things maybe, but yeah, even microwaves and things like that. So loss prevention is a big thing when it comes to the revenue.
And wastage management, because I think that's an important role, and I think that should be taken very seriously in the Western countries, because if you do a lot of waste, there are countries in Africa, and of course there are parts in India where people don't get to eat as well. It's like the waste management could play a very important role. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the waste management, not just in the stores and things like that, but in homes, and when they actually collect this waste from every home, there should be a way. I feel that there should be a way to really measure how much we are really wasting. Like you mentioned, there's I think I've seen some stat like more than 50% or 60% is actually people who what we buy goes into the waste. So how do we measure that? How do we actually help them plan better? Right, so how much they're eating, just looking at their waste, maybe having a camera in the bin, looking at it, like what they're wasting, what they're not wasting, what they're buying, correlating both of them and saying that this is what, maybe recommending a optimal kind of things when they have to buy.
Okay. Before I get to the final question to you guys, everyone who's watching this, guys, if you've got a question, please put that in the comment section and I'll take that in just 5 minutes. And the final question, where do you see data science in the next 5 years? If you were to look at 5 years, where do you see that? What changes do you see in the data science stream? Will it even survive? Will it be there in 5 years later? Some people said that it will be all automated and we will be not requiring data scientists anymore. Where do you think it's going? Aruna?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, right? If people ask me where I want to be 5 years down the line, I really don't know. Like there might be something new and interesting. I want to jump into that. Right now, looking at the GPT-3 algorithms, which are writing a lot of things, which are doing a lot of automated things, right? They're really optimizing things, the text and everything, and they might be writing this code, automating this part. But I would say there will be roles. The intelligence in the AI has been increasing over time, right? What we expected 10 years back is very different from what we expect today. And it'll be different to what we expect 5 years down the line. So the complexity will increase. Whatever we are thinking of innovation today might be very old then, and there'll be new things coming up, right? The more complex problems we'll be solving.
Smitha?
So I think there are still a whole class of problems where we've not exposed data science to. I mean, if I take at a personal level and a personal interest, I have a lot of interest in conservation, a lot of the whole forest management activities, etc. Right, and there's also geographic areas which we've not yet mapped. Where there's actually a lot of opportunity. So if you think about it, and this is one out of probably 100,000 areas where people are not using data science. So every such area will go through its own evolution. Every evolution will be faster than the earlier one because they will learn from the mistakes and the learnings of the past. But that's not going to go anywhere out of business in the next 5 years, is would be what I would say. Yes, granted, what we were doing 10 years ago manually today is automated. What we're doing manually today will likely, code writing will probably get a lot more automated. But the interpretation piece, as models become complex, interpretation will become even more complex. And I think we would still need a lot more human intelligence to interpret. And maybe 20 years from now, you will have AI algorithms interpreting as well. I don't know. But I would still say the skill shift will happen. But and since everything is going towards AI, everything, you've got an algorithm that's throwing out something there. How do you make sure that the output is even relevant? Right now, as we speak, right, a lot of models have broken because of COVID. The patterns learned before COVID do not hold during COVID. All our anything from customer targeting, marketing, traffic algorithms, everything has gone for a toss. Now, things like that will continue to happen. So how I would still say there's always the element of the human part of it, the human intelligence, that's going to still become more and more premium because you need the domain, you need to be able to interact with that model, figure that out. I think that part will actually grow bigger and bigger.
Okay, perfect. Let's get into the audience question and answers and take it from there. We'll take the comments one by one. Poonam Sood, she's a regular on the show. She says hi to you, both of you. She comes in on almost every show. She's an absolute regular. There's a question from Amresh. Hi Amresh, how are you? And he says, does data science require only technical background to get into it? How does this impact to sales and marketing career? Please throw some light on this.
Data science. Yeah. For marketing and sales, it's actually one of the prime use cases for data science, right? But then usually they start with it, marketing and sales, to looking into it and models. Again, like the example I've given earlier, it's important to understand what's happening in the marketing, who are the customers we are targeting and everything. The numbers will help you make that decision, but you need to understand the industry. Like what Smitha was mentioning, you need that human to interpret what the problem is and get that problem into the system to get the data from the insights from the data, right? So there are multiple roles within the sales and marketing career. Again, if you're very your skills are very deep into the sales and marketing, you can actually be that interpreter to get that insights from the data.
Okay. Smitha, you want to add something?
So agreed. I think the question was specifically, does it require only a technical background? No, as I said, I'm a case in point. I don't have a technical background. The other is the fact that see, it's important to have an appreciation of technology. That cannot be overemphasized. I cannot still be a domain expert who does not understand data. You still have to be able to contextualize data. You don't need to be a heavy lifter. You don't need to know how to write a DL or a DL model or a ML model, none of that. But you have to find your spot in the sun. And that's where the aptitude becomes important. So I would say lack of a technology background or technical background is not an impediment, but you have to have the aptitude to work with people with that background. Otherwise, this will not be successful.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Next comment is from Poonam. She says, hi Poonam again. Good to see so many women in data science. Well, I'm expecting more women. So if you know any more women, please mention their name and I will bring them on. Amresh Kalekar says, Mr. Abhinandan Sarkar should be here in this show. We can have a different show for him. He's not a woman, so can't be in this show, but definitely I'll try and reach out to him. If you can send me the details of Mr. Amresh, I will reach out to him. Amresh says, a prominent speaker and a deep knowledge of data science. Yes, that's true for both of the ladies. Then there is one comment which has not come through the system, but it is there on LinkedIn, and I'll take that up now. And that is from Meenakshi Arun Subramanian. And she says, Soumya Moni, who's co-leading a Women in Data, Big Data in India initiative. So Meenakshi has mentioned Soumya Moni, and so I will reach out to Soumya to see if she wants to be on the show, and we will have to try to do it. So those were the questions on which I had and the audience had from you two guys. Thank you very much for your time. It's a shame that we couldn't get Sheetal on the show. I think she's in Mumbai and there is a flooding situation there, so it might have just had a problem with the network connectivity or something. We couldn't reach out to her at the same time. Before you guys go, and this is a question I usually ask to everyone, and that's around COVID-19. If I turn back 6 months ago and I ask this question again, do you think data science could help in COVID-19 in any way or form? Or did it help?
Yeah, I think it's,
Aruna?
yeah, I think it's already helping, right? Like we actually see a lot of solutions with thermal scanning and the healthcare industry, identifying identifying the symptoms of COVID from the X-rays and things like that. And also overall, right? Like Smitha was mentioning, what are the sales? How can we actually get the whole spending patterns? How can we get the living patterns? We completely change the way we live, right? We're just not traveling, we're not spending so much, we're not eating out so much, we're not socializing. How does this really affect our mental health? Maybe these are all the things which we can model from the data we have. And I think it's very early stages, right? We don't have enough data to see patterns across months or years together. So it'll take some time, but I think there are already lots of applications in the space.
Totally. So I think, if you look at anything on COVID today, it's all facts and figures is how everybody's reporting, right? And if you look, starting from, I think there was the first dashboard, the large dashboard that was built was John Hopkins built a fantastic COVID dashboard that everybody was referring to. Today, there is a Kaggle contest happening on how do you model COVID-related behavior and how do you model COVID-related spread. In fact, I think it's live right now on Kaggle. There is the first time I heard of the R number for doubling of diseases was during COVID. So it's already made, data science has already made its way to mainstream reporting because of COVID to a great extent. And we will never be able to know whether data science helped control it or predict, it's not going to be easy. The assumption here is that it has, because we've had this vast data available real time. There is a lot of learning that's happening across countries. India is learning from the US experience, the US is looking at the UK experience, and it's all data based. And I think a lot of scenario planning, scenario modeling, it's all data driven. And that was not going to happen either from real-time availability of data or from a computational power. Had this happened 30 years ago, none of this would have happened. Right? I think so. There is definitely a contribution that's happening on the ground at a management level, as well as impact assessment, and even go forward. Recovery will also be heavily data-driven going forward.
Okay, that's brilliant. I have to ask you a question, but one thing. There is a comment from Dushyant, and he was there on my show 2 days ago, and he said, "Hi all, in agreement, lack of tech background is not an impediment. It's one's commitment to your purpose and problem statement. We are living in an age of collective wisdom and collaborations. Understanding the use case and interplay of tech and domain team, along with the user requirements and experience is important." And to be honest, he's the vice president of Nagarjun Fertilizers. So it is iKisan, and he also advises to the PMO. So thank you, Dushyant, for that comment. And I think you're absolutely right. And the ladies were absolutely saying the same thing. And nodding their heads, so absolutely right. Okay. Thank you, Dushyant, for that comment. And before you guys go, one message you want to leave for the audience. Both of you. Aruna?
Yeah, message is be curious and keep learning, right? Just like the models.
Learning.
Yeah, I think data is everywhere, wherever you look. So if you have the aptitude for it, don't wait for somebody to offer you a job. I think you can create your own opportunities to play with data and figure out where you can contribute.
Absolutely true. And thank you very much for your time, ladies. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And yeah, I look forward to having other women in the next episode, which would be 2 weeks from now. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time, girls.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
So guys, those were Aruna from Dell and Smitha from Yodlee, if I've got it right. I keep on making sure that that's the right name. Hopefully, you guys learned a thing or two from these two ladies. They had immense experience to share, and it was a pleasure having them on the show. Thank you very much for your time. And before I go, there is a message from Dushyant who says, great parting statements by both guests. Yes, Dushyant, thank you very much. It was great to have a statement from both of them, which was absolutely great parting statements. So guys, thank you very much for your time. If you're watching this show on LinkedIn, please follow me. If you're watching it on Twitter, please follow me. If you're watching it on YouTube, please press the subscribe button and smash the bell icon so that you can be alerted when a new show is on. I will be back on Tuesday, which is just 4 days from now, wherein I will be bringing in the AI Startup Insight series episode, and hopefully you will learn a thing or two from the new startup CEOs. So thank you very much. And